Well, hello, Flower Power Cruisers, and welcome back to All Access Pass. I'm your cruise host, Jason. Well, I'm your stay at home cruise host, Jason, this week. And coming to you from Portland, Oregon at the moment, I have next to me here on camera the one and only Mr. Peter Noone. How are you, sir?
How you doing, Jason? It's good to see you.
You as
Share
well.
the hot ship.
Yeah, amen. How are you? How have you been? I haven't seen you in almost a year now.
I'm living the dream. I work hard and I get paid well and I stay healthy, and all those things are probably called having a life.
Good for you. Did you imagine when you were just a youngin' that you would have a life?
I never imagined it would be quite this good. Every day I get up in the morning and I say, why me, Lord?
And what does the Lord say in return?
His answer is because you were always a nice person. Let's hope they put that on your gravestone.
Isn't that the truth?
Yeah.
Well, obviously, we're not able to be on the Flower Power cruise right now, but we're doing our best to bring our guests some hellos from their favorite people, and you, of course, are right there at the top of some of our all-time favorites. And I do appreciate you taking the time to chat with me. If you don't mind, I'd love to start because we have guests from other cruises that are able to tune in and watch these as well. So if
Oh, nice.
yeah, if you don't mind, I know you and I have done a few of these interviews, and most of our regular Flower Power guests and our malt shop know you well. But let's pretend some of these folks don't know you as well. Let's go back to a very young Peter Noone. What got you into the business? What made you decide that music was going to be a journey you wanted to take?
Well, I came from a musical family. Everybody, at every funeral, every baptism, every christening, every marriage, everybody went into a room called the parlor, and everybody played a musical instrument. And we were typical Irish family, kind of, even though we were English. And we all sang songs and cried and laughed, and there was some alcohol involved, of course,
Well,
but.
it's an Irish thing, so yeah.
Yeah, no, it's just a party thing, and I was quite often the lead singer because I knew, for some reason, I was able to remember the words to songs and the tunes to songs. So everybody's given a special ability. Mine was a memory for words and melodies. And my dad played the trombone. My grandfather played the piano. There was another piano, and my grandmother was a great singer. And we did songs from the 20s, 30s, songs from ever.
That's
And
wonderful.
eventually, my dad thought I was too good for the teacher at my school, the music teacher, and he got me in a thing called night school, which was a college of music in Manchester.
Hmm.
And while I was there, I got a job as an actor, and I was in Coronation Street, which was this famous English television series. And I used the money from being an actor to buy a van, finance a group. It was called a beat group, and that beat group metamorphosized into what ultimately became Herman's Hermits. It was the Cyclones and Pete Novak and the Heartbeats and the Wailers and the Balmains and all these different groups. Eventually, we put the 5 players for Herman's Hermits, and we all traveled around in a van, and we had quite similar tastes in music. So we chose the Buddy Holly, Everly Brothers, Chuck Berry, Roy Orbison, sort of romantic songs. And we ultimately got a record deal, basically because we were the only band in Liverpool and Manchester who didn't have a deal. And we got signed, and we fell into the perfect. We fell on our feet in with Mickey Most, who was the producer, and he didn't like any of our songs. And he said, "Try this one." And he had this song called "I'm Into Something Good," and we had to go at it. And came out on. I think we made it on the Monday, and it was out on the Thursday. On the Friday, I heard it on the radio. I was in Bolton near Manchester, and I heard it on the radio. And that was the beginning of my career, really. That was when we realized that we could play and make money, so we
Sure.
could be professional musicians.
And
Before we'd been professional musicians getting paid, but we didn't make any money.
yeah,
We
of
just,
course. And
uh,
roughly, if you don't mind me asking, how old are you at this phase?
well, the first band, I was probably about 12 or 13, and by the time when the first record was number one, I was just 16.
16 years old.
16, yeah, but the rest of the band were quite young as well. There was a couple of 17-year-olds and an 18-year-old and a 20-year-old. really a boy band before the word boy band
Yeah.
was. But we suddenly realized that we were quite good and quite unique because we play the Cavern and we play concerts with the Beatles and the Stones and the Kinks, and we realized that we were all different, and so we didn't have to compete with them because each person was unique.
And you really were one of the very first teen heartthrobs. You know, you were a cover boy, if you will, at that young age. How do you manage that level of, I'm going to use a terrible word, notoriety and fame at such a young age?
You know, I was always in the shadow musically of greatness, and trust me, there were a lot of really much better looking guys around than me. And I thought, well, when they see me in person, I'll be able to tell which girls are really into it because they'll have the staple stuck on their nose from the fold out picture.
And you mentioned obviously who you had some inspirations there and who you took inspiration from, but you had a lot of wonderful leaders on the British music scene as well. I mean, you have some great stories about the Stones, you know, kind of taking you under their wing. And
well, no, you know, when you're a kid, first of all, English rock and roll, the English rock and roll scene, British rock and roll scene was very small. Yeah. We all knew each other. If we didn't actually know the person, we knew all about them because it was a small music scene. There were lots of people playing in music, but there weren't many. We only knew the ones who'd got to level 2, which was you could play the Cavern, the Oasis, and we knew lots of other guys. But the people who made level 2 quite frequently went on to be a bit bigger. So we knew the Beatles and we knew the Stones, and they were kind to us because we weren't competition. We were just a bunch of kids. Remember?
Yeah.
I could hang out with them. I mean, I'd met the Beatles lots of times, but once I went to the Ad Lib in London and I get in the lift with John Lennon and this guy who works for him, and as we walk into the club, I'm not old enough to be in the club in the first place. I think I'm not 18, but I think you needed to be 21. So I get in the club because I'm with John Lennon, even not with him. I'm just standing next to him when we go into the thing. Yeah. And we sit down and the cocktail waitress says, she looks at me and she goes, there's a 2-drink minimum. Basically saying, are you 18? Mm-hmm. And John says, yeah, I'll have 2 Bacardis and he'll have 2 Cokes. And they got the drinks and he switched the Cokes up. And I became what I thought was a champion drinker. Yeah,
by doing it 1 Bacardi and Coke.
Yeah, I was a champion. I thought there was some sort of competition so I could beat, you know, I still see Eric Burden from the Animals, and I used to be able to drink him under the table. And he recently told me it was easy because I lived upstairs from the club. I could just crawl up the stairs. Basically making an apology for leaving him under the table in a nightclub. And they said, no, don't worry, because I just had to crawl up those stairs to my room. So, and, you know, the Stones were, you know, we came up at the same time as the Stones, and we sort of knew them, we knew them and we would see them often because we were on the same music scene. So We'd see them at Top of the Pops, we'd see them at Thank You Lucky Stars. We'd see them often. We'd see them at the Beat Club in Germany. So we were kind of just acquaintances, you know, the Musicians Union. We were all members of it, like plumbers.
Yeah.
And you know, once I remember I was in New York and we'd just been on the Ed Sullivan Show, and we had this song called Henry VIII. Mm-hmm. And I remember standing on the roof of the City Squire Hotel in New York with Tom Jones and a couple of the Rolling Stones and Tom Jones' manager. And we're standing there, and seriously, it's not an exaggeration. There were thousands of people on the street, maybe it's called Lexington, thousands of young people all singing Henry VIII. It's not a complicated song to sing, so they didn't. But they kept singing it over and over and over and over again. And later in the same night, I had a few drinks, and Andrew Oldham and Keith Richards found me in the stairwell of the hotel because I didn't used to like lifts. I don't like elevators.
You still don't like them?
I still don't like them.
Yeah.
It's one of those things. Everybody's allowed to have an idiosyncrasy. Some may call it a phobia, but it's just for me, it's an idiosyncrasy. Yeah. Doing the stairs is good for my lungs and stuff. So anyway, so I'm on the stairs and Keith Richards and Andrew Oldham, who was this charming, really fascinating intellectual man called Andrew Oldham, who was their manager, their producer, everything. And they corner me in the corner, and Keith Richards says, if ever I find you doing any drugs, I'm going to find you and I'm going to beat you up. That was the expression. That would be kick your ass or something.
Yeah.
I'm going to beat you up. And I went, ooh, you don't have to worry about that. I don't like drugs. Like, oops.
Yeah.
But I never liked that, and I got good messages from other members of the Stones who died from drugs.
Sure.
So I don't think I knew that guy pretty well. So that's the kind of thing that went on. The Beatles were always very nice to me. Once they were, I wasn't even, I think I was just in Herman's Hermits, and we were sort of like a semi-little band. And they were doing a TV show in Manchester, a Granada television show. And my TV show that I'd been in as a kid was at the same studios. So I showed up at the studios, and the people at the gate let me in. It's Beatles. Right?
Yeah.
They let me in because there's that guy from Coronation Street. So I go in, and I sit next to them in the cafeteria as if I know them.
Mm-hmm.
You get
You're all buddies.
You get a tray, sausage, egg, and chips, and a cup of tea. And the Beatles were normal, nice guys. So and I put my tray next to them, and I sit and eat with them as if I know them, and I don't know them. I know who they are, and I've seen them in clubs and everything. And eventually, Paul McCartney gets up and he goes into a room talking to George Martin. And because I'm an idiot, really just naive more than being an idiot, I joined them in the room. In the dressing room, and
because your opinion is valid at that point.
Pardon?
They clearly needed your input. Your opinion was valid at that.
They wanted me. I'm just there, and feeling a bit uncomfortable because I'm not really being part of the conversation. And they say, so I say, well, what is that? What are you talking about? I don't understand. And I go, well, we're talking about compression. Oh. And I say, what's compression? Compression is like compression.
Yeah,
compression. And they go, no. And Paul McCartney, clearly the kindest, most gentlemanly person on the planet, looks at me and he says, well, compression, he says, when you hear a Fats Domino record, it was I Found My Thrill, and then when the piano comes in, you can't hear the piano while he's singing. What we're doing is we're using compression so you can hear all the instruments equally, and it's called compression. And I go, oh, yeah, Fats Domino. And George Martin looks at me and he says, have you recorded any of the Beatles songs? I go, no. And he goes, see you later. Because the TV show they were doing was called, it was people who did the Beatles, who recorded the Beatles songs.
Yeah.
And it was Ella Fitzgerald and Matt Monro. There was these huge...
Sure.
Beatles, these were superstar people, Henry Mancini, Ella Fitzgerald, Matt Monro.
And Peter Noone.
Herman.
Yeah.
That guy, which song did you record from the Beatles? Oh, no. Goodbye.
Yeah, ciao.
So good stuff like that happened to me. I was lucky because most of the people who made it in show business at the time were actually really nice people. No surprises.
Yeah.
You easily got found out if you were not kind to the family. My experience was I saw the Everly Brothers with my sister, and my sister was such a big fan of Don Everly that after their concert we went. I was probably 9. After the concert, my dad would always make her take me,
of course,
wherever she went on dates until she was 23. So I was there, and I was this 9-year-old kid with my big sister who was a real fan of Don Everly. And they came out of the dressing room door at the backstage, Manchester Palace. And they were so kind. Oh, ha! They had these great sort of Texas, Kentucky accents that I'd never heard before. Hi, well, hey, where you from? And they were so kind. I go, if ever I become famous for anything, I'm going to be like them. And I think most of the people like Roy Orbison and everybody that I met from a certain period were always gentlemen,
sure,
very kind to their fans and cared, I suppose. So I pretend.
It's all about sincerity. Once you can fake that, you've got it made, right? Yeah. Um, I mean, I'm not asking you to certainly pick on any stars. We're not naming names, but as stars have gone on and as stardom has gone on in life, I find that a lot of people are more self-involved than they were at that point in time, and a lot of stars aren't necessarily taking the time to treat their fans and with kindness and respect. Is that something that you chalk up to just the sheer amount of fandom? I mean, the social media and all the things, or where do you think that the table turned a little bit in there, or did it?
Well, there's different kinds of people in show business, and I call it under the radar. And if you look at Mick Jagger,
Yeah.
he's clearly he's a massively famous, massively famous, but he's under the radar. He never does a red carpet thing. He never does any of that pandering stuff. He just doesn't do it. And I'm under the radar. I have a following, and I'll take care of the following. But I don't care about people who don't know me. I'm not going looking for any new people to like. Just if you like me, I'll be nice to you. Yeah. But I don't need to go on any red carpet. I did a show called American Idol. Mm-hmm. And part of the deal was that you had to go on a red carpet. And I knew the producers. They're friends of mine. Nigel Lithgow was one of the producers, and he goes, "Yeah, you have to go on the red carpet." I said, "No, Nigel, I don't do the red carpet thing." He goes, "What do you mean you don't do the red carpet?" I said, "Well, I've never done it. I don't know how you do it. What happens? I've never been on a red carpet." Because there was no red carpet at the Grammys. It was a theatre that wasn't a red carpet thing. It wasn't about photographs of people in clothes. It was about getting an award. Yeah. And he goes, "Well, you're going to have to do it." So I said, "Well, it's my first time." And then I realized the only other person that I know who hasn't done a red carpet thing for about 50 years, Mick Jagger, Keith Richards, Paul McCartney, me.
Yeah, not bad company, sir. Not bad company.
No, but there's a type of personality who is under the radar. I mean, I can walk around the airport, and Paul McCartney can walk around. He puts a pair of glasses on and a hat, and he can walk around, and people don't know who he is. If he had two big guards with leather coats with a hidden thing, people would go, "I wonder who that is."
Who is it? Yeah, even if you don't know who it is specifically, it's somebody.
Yeah, and once Frank Sinatra's manager told me. Because I said, well, we can get a limousine company to provide 5 limos for him and his guests. He said, well, we'll take 4 limos and a town car. I go, well, why not take 5 limos? He goes, Frank's already a star. He'll take a town car.
Wow. That's perspective for you, isn't it?
Yeah, and if you're already a star, you don't want all the attention that a limo brings to you. As people who want to be a star.
Well, it's interesting too. I think people, it's often misunderstood what an introvert and an extrovert truly are. People think that introverts and extroverts are just good and bad with people, when in reality, clinically speaking, it's how you expel and gain energy. And often, many of the biggest stars are introverted. And knowing you personally, I would say you're bordering on the introvert side, meaning not that it has no bearing on how good you are with people or how good you are in front of fans. It purely means that some people go on stage and gain energy. And those are the people that are always on. Those are the people that need the red carpets. They need the limos. They need that adoration because it feeds their battery. And then there's the other stars that go the other way, and they give energy on stage. They give energy to people. So to recharge, they need to pull away from it.
I think I've often thought, because it could be idiosyncratic as well as being, but I think already the band is called Herman's Hermits, remember? So we are probably more likely to be introverted anyway, or reclusive. And I think that I am the audience, which is really, I feel very comfortable with people who are my audience because I know they like the same music as me. We have the same tastes, and I'm glad that they like me because I don't know if I would go and see Hermits. Yeah. I'm not sure if I would, but they're sitting there in the audience. They love a period of music, and I feel a very close connection with those people, which is really, it's maybe idiosyncratic, but I feel a very close connection with it, and I think I know what they want. But I don't know until I see them what they want.
Sure.
Does this make sense?
Absolutely.
So we don't have a set list. because I don't know how the audience is going to react to we always start with I'm into something good, wonderful world, and then I usually do Love Potion number 9, because everybody knows Love Potion number, they all know that, so I can see if they're going to sing with me that evening. And then after then I do, depending on what's happened there in those 3 songs and how that's changed the energy of the room. And I decide what's coming next, and that has been really fortuitous for my group. We just had our best year ever, the most money, the most dates, and all that thing since 1965.
Wow!
Because I think I connect to the audience, and I truly think that's an unusual connection. I think that people who withdrawn from hanging with the same people they went to school with. Remember, when I go to England, I stay at a guy's house who I went to school with. We've known each other that long,
cool.
And he still likes me. So, I'm still connected quite well to my roots, which is also important. And my roots is all music. I'm still, I still love to hang out with people from that period, whether they made it or not. A lot of really great people never made it. Really great. The luck thing in show business is not spread around equally. It's like abundance. God didn't put abundance everywhere. He kept a few people out of it. We've got a lot of too much, and some people have nothing at all.
Sure.
In show business, some people have got no luck. I came up with guys in bands who they were so brilliant, but they didn't get the right song. They didn't get the right manager. And when I tell my story, I say, see, everybody deserves a credit. Even that woman in the canteen at Abbey Road, what was called EMI Studios, even that woman in the canteen who made a good cup of tea and a nice cheese and egg sandwich, a cheese and onion sandwich, she's key to the record as well, because we all felt great after that meal, and we all had a little more energy. And George Martin was around saying things like, alcohol is the enemy of music. And we were listening to all this information. Oh, we shouldn't probably be this drunk on the record.
Less drunk on the record. Just a little less drunk.
Let's try making a record sober.
Yeah. That's a novel concept, isn't it?
I've not discovered sober, but
That's for another life. It's for another life. Okay. How did you actually come up with the name Herman's Hermits?
We were in a pub in Manchester, Wythenshawe, Manchester, and we were rehearsing, and I put on I had these horn-rimmed glasses, and I put them on, and I went, what little things you say and do. And the pub owner, the publican, came over and he said, hey, Peter, who's that you're doing? And I said, Buddy Holly, He said, you don't look anything like Buddy Holly. You look like Herman from the Bullwinkle Show. And even Sherman from the Bullwinkle Show, Sherman.
Yeah.
So we thought it was doubly funny because Herman was like Hubert. No rock star would be called Hubert or Herman or Jeremy or Jason.
Yeah, exactly.
So we thought, Herman, great, we're all laughing about it. He says, and you lot, you can call yourself the bloody Hermits because you dressed like hermits. And we said, Herman and the bloody Hermits. And he said, Herman and the Hermits, that's a great name for a band. Because at the time, the tastes were changing. There were bands with kind of really odd names like Jerry and the Pacemakers and all that. And they didn't realize one day they'd be wearing the pacemakers.
They'd actually,
But it was just an unusual name, and it worked instantly. We set ourselves up as being kind of a comedy group. When we went to the Cavern, we would open with My Boy Lollipop. And believe me, no bands were doing My Boy Lollipop. No guys dared to even think of doing that in those days.
Well, what made you want to? What made you want to go that route?
No, because nobody else
was doing it.
Was doing the song. We had to. If you wanted to play the Cavern regularly, and we played there sometimes 3 times a day, you had to be unique because everybody was doing all of Chuck Berry's songs. Everybody was doing Fortune Teller. Everybody was doing Roll Over Beethoven. Everybody was doing Sweets for My Sweet. So we did Mrs. Brown, You Got a Lovely Daughter, My Boy Lollipop, which was, I sang it pretty good. My Boy Lollipop. And it was a ska thing, and that was kind of and had a good thing going, and Mrs. Brown was odd because nobody else would sing a song to somebody's mother, and we would follow Mrs. Brown, who got a lovely daughter, with Mother-in-Law, which was an Ernie K. Dodd, Mother-in-Law, Mother-in-Law, because somebody in the band could do the good
Yeah.
Mother-in-Law, and we did that, and not one person in the audience said, "Isn't that a bit weird for a 14-year-old boy to be singing about his mother-in-law?"
Somebody should have said that, but nobody did.
Nobody
Yeah.
thought of it, see, because it was just a good song that everybody liked. See, people didn't think what songs were about. They thought, "Oh, I like this song."
Yeah. Did you recognize at the time? I mean, I suppose it's hard when you're in your teens to recognize the gravity of it all and recognize where you're headed, and as your success starts to build. Were you aware of it at all, or were you kind of in the dark and just going along with the tide?
We just wanted to hear our music.
Yeah.
We wanted more than just us in a room to hear our music. It was a very common thing at the time for, you would hear your friends on the radio. I mean, they were my friends. So there's nothing more exciting than your friend getting a hit record. Do you know that? There is nothing
That's a
nothing
cool
that's
thought.
ever exciting. It's like it's equal. It's very, very important. And my parents lived in Liverpool, and I lived at my grandmother's in Manchester. Because of just that's the way it works. My parents are from Liverpool, but I live with my grandmother, and every kid in that street of my grandmother's, every house had either a drummer, a guitar player, a saxophone player. Everybody was in a band, and some of them were not very good, and some of them were really great. They didn't all make it, but everybody was in on the game. Beat groups were the new thing that it would replace stamp collections.
And did you have a point in that frame? Did you have a point where you recognized that this was going to be a career with longevity? Or, I mean, when did that start to sink in that this was going to be something you were going to do for decades?
You see, it's an unusual question. It's an unusual thing. I can't really answer it because I never ever did it for a career. Yeah. Remember, I had a hobby, which was music, and I had records, and I played records, and then I learned the words to the records, and then I played them in a band, and I enjoyed that. And I probably would still be doing it if I never earned a nickel, because I enjoyed that. It's what I do for my fun, and it also became my job.
Yeah.
Can you imagine anybody lucky enough? Thank God I didn't have a stamp collection. Seriously, because maybe I'd now be like a philatelist, like trading stamps online or something.
Good word.
But I was fortunate that I got in music, because music is a really happy environment.
It certainly can be. Yeah.
Yeah, and you could, if you've got nice people in your crew and stuff like that, it makes life easier. I've always been very cautious about how I have in the band right from the very beginning. The very first band, we were in a van, and one of the guys ate beans on toast 3 times a day. He was very quickly out.
He was out of the band. Yeah, purely because he wasn't allowed in the van anymore. I'm sure.
There were no windows in the van.
Do you remember the first tour you booked?
Yeah, it was with Jerry and the Pacemakers and Billy J. Kramer. And Jerry, he's my hero, Jerry and the Pacemakers. They gave us our first big break. We got on to be touring with people who were famous. Before that, we were playing with the Mavericks and the Mojos and the Undertakers and the sort of semi-famous people. But Jerry had the #1 record in England, How Do You Do It? All right, How Do You Do It? And I got the ticket, and he was very, very funny, because he goes, we get there, the sound check it would be called now, but it was just really setting up your gear. And, we had to set up in the front of all their posh gear.
Sure.
Tree and everything. And Jerry says, "Who are you?" "Hey, who are you?" I said, "Oh, we were called Pete Novak and the Heartbeats." "I'm Pete Novak, and this is the Heartbeats." He said, "Oh, great. Let me show you your dressing room." And he took us down the corridor, and he opened the door to the gentleman's toilet. We all went in. And
I've really made it.
We got punked. And then he kept us on the tour. We weren't very good, but he kept us on the tour. So the idea of a band that not working, getting good didn't exist. The more we would work for anything. My sister knew a friend who had a hairdressing salon, and we'd do free gigs there, So we just played a lot, and that's it. When I knew I was going to make it, I was on a double-decker bus from my grandmother's, She lived in this place called Flixton, and I was going to meet the band in Manchester for a rehearsal. And I'm on the bus, and in those days they had a guy with a little thing like with the tickets, and he charged you twopence. It was two pence to go to Manchester, and he had this little machine, and he hands me the ticket, and he looked at me, he says, "You're that Herman bloke." I go, yeah. He says, "What are you doing on a bus? You're famous. You should get a taxi." And, I had never thought of that. Wow. I didn't realize just because you got a number one record, you can't go on a bus anymore. And that was suddenly, I didn't realize that was part of being famous, that you couldn't do stuff that you just did every day since you went to school. So I got off and I didn't go on a bus for a long time. But now every time I go to England, I go upstairs on a double-decker bus.
How often do you get back?
I go a lot, actually, a lot more than most American citizens would do. I still feel this massive connection to England. Yeah. So I still think of that as home, although I haven't lived there for 40 years. I'm sort of very well connected in England. My family's all, sure. My original family, my new family's all here with me, but my original family, like all my aunties and uncles and sisters and nieces and nephews, they all live in England still. So I go back and I hang out. I do one tour every now and then. I do 38 concerts, play Liverpool, Manchester, Leeds, all the places I like to play. And I hang out with my friends and get paid.
There's worse things in life, Peter.
There's nothing better than that, to go do a concert, get paid, then go out with all your friends.
That's awesome. Well, you said you said at the beginning of this that you just came off your best year since the 1960s.
Yeah. Well, and in 1965, I got this great, the internet. So I was looking at Peter Noone meets Elvis Presley. And I wanted to get the pictures, collect them from putting on my website. And I read the story, and it's from the Honolulu newspaper. And it goes, Peter Noone, Herman from Herman's Hermits, is meeting his idol, Elvis Presley, today. Peter Noone is on a 360-day tour. And you go, a 360-day tour. So we go looking at all the records. And, we did 360 concerts in that year. And we made a movie. And we made records. And 5 of them were in the top 10 that year.
How's it even possible?
It just sounded impossible because, we were kids.
Yeah.
So kids just go. Somebody said, "Where are we going today?" We're going to the Philippines. Oh, good. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, let's go.
That's who we were. Teenager, what a dream gig. It's like what a dream gig. Girls chasing you. Before we had a hit record, girls wouldn't even talk to us.
Do you remember the first time you encountered a lady fan who just lost it when she saw you?
It was a growing thing. What happened was, when we played the Cavern, there was a girl who would sit on the side of the stage, at the front of the stage, for all the shows, and her name was Margaret. I don't know anything else about her. She was Margaret. She was very pretty, but she was just a fan, and it wasn't somebody that you wanted to marry.
Yeah,
she was a fan, so we knew the difference. So we'd call it, instead of calling it fan, which is from fanatic, we'd call it following. She was part of our following, and she was the original. And then after we played at the Cavern 5 or 6 times, we'd have 6. Then it was 60. Then it was 600. Then we came to America, it was 60,000.
Yeah.
So it just was a growing thing, So the idea of being the good... You see, I chose the name Herman because I thought that would be perfect not to be classed as the teen idol thing. What normal girl would scream the word Herman?
Herman.
But they would. They did.
What
the idea of our band was, we wanted to not be a teen band, because we were a teen band.
Yeah, because you were a teen band. Yeah. And as you look back on it now, I mean, are you surprised? Are you amazed? Are you impressed that you made it out the way you did? There's a lot of people that experience that level of fandom at a young age that don't come out the other side level-headed, that don't come out the other side appreciative.
I think I always knew who I really was. I think it's unfortunate if you make it when you're very young and you aren't like a working class person,
Sure.
because whenever I thought a bit cool and good, I always remembered my grandfather getting up in the morning when it was dark, going on his bike, working in a steel foundry,
Hmm.
and coming home knackered and going, eating dinner, not very good meals, and going to bed. And my grandmother would give him 10 shillings, a 10 bob note on Thursdays, and he'd go and have a half pint of beer and then come home. Their lives
Yeah.
was so about feeding just the
Yeah.
inner circle, which was their children and then maybe their aunties. And I've always been sort of one of those people. I know it sounds ridiculous, but I've always had a really good um, idea of who I am.
But that foundation is necessary, though. I mean, if you've
Oh,
experienced not having, and if you've experienced people that you love not having, it allows you to better negotiate and navigate having.
in my case, I think I was just overeducated for the position that I was given. Because a
Sure.
lot of people, I think the person that I felt the closest to my personality was Brian Jones, who didn't have the same experience. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
I would say, in those days, I'd hang out with Brian and I go, wow, you have a very similar story to mine. Very good education, comparatively speaking, of English grammar school education. And he didn't turn out well, but it could be who you run into along the way as well.
Yeah.
Like when you walk into school that first day at school, it's the first guy you meet in the playground who you're going to connect to. And if he's a robber and a burglar and a drug addict,
It could be your
maybe,
path.
yeah.
Uh, there's a couple of guests who submitted some things that they wanted me to ask you, if you'd be so kind. Uh, Dee Dee Adkins says, "Does getting up on stage ever feel old hat, or is the excitement still there?"
No, I still run on stage. That's what I do all day. And Didi, what it is
I
I
apologize,
think,
Debbie. I apologize. I misread it. Debbie.
hey, Debbie, I think I still run on stage because I think that all the long-term musicians that I know are actually athletes. Secretly, they became athletes, and you need to constantly keep yourself fit. I mean, if you look at the people that are still around, like Paul McCartney and Mick Jagger and me, we sort of still think of ourselves as athletes. We've got to be fit
Sure.
because the reward is to give a good show. There's nothing worse for an entertainer than to have one audience member who's disappointed.
Sure.
And we all head towards that slowly. And the only way
Yeah.
you can do that is to think of yourself as an athlete. Work hard on your throat, work hard on your fitness, work hard on your lungs, all that stuff that I do. And I see that the ones who stick around a long time are like me.
Yeah. Truth to that. Uh, let's see. Ruby, who comes to us from Tampa, Florida, says, "I met and had a photo with you at Ruth Eckerd Hall in Clearwater, Christmas 2017. In Clearwater, Christmas 2017. Thank you so much for your kindness. Your show was so much fun and the music was absolutely fantastic. It was one of the best memories of my entire life. And for that, and for all the memories before that, you will always be my favorite. God bless you and thank you."
Well, isn't that nice? You should get out more often, Ruby.
Yeah.
You should try coming on a cruise. You get to meet loads of nice people.
Uh, Peter, I really do appreciate you taking the time to be with us. I'm asking everybody right now, and I'd kind of like to conclude by asking you the question: if you have any thoughts or comments on the current situation we all seem to be in. Obviously, we can't be on the cruise, and I know that's gut wrenching for all of us. And how are you feeling right now? Everything, how are things going in your home and around how's your thoughts?
Well, I'm being cautious, like everybody. I'm just following orders right now. I'm keeping
Yeah,
6 feet away from everybody. And, when it comes back, it'll be better than ever because, it will come back. We know it's going to come back. And I've always been Panglossian, which is naively
hmm
optimistic.
hmm
But I'm optimistic that when everything gets back to normal, we'll all enjoy all those things that we took for granted much, much more.
That's wonderful. That's a great message. And I think the same goes for Obviously, the same goes for these cruises. You know, we get questions all the time of, well, is flower power done for? And of course not. Of course it's not done for. Not as a generation, not as a music, and certainly not as a cruise. I mean, it's all going to continue. And to your point, it comes back stronger. I really do believe it.
It'll come back stronger, and people will be more grateful for they won't just accept it as being a regular occurrence. They'll go, wow, this is great. Wow, can you believe all these people showed up for this? Like every time I do a concert, I look through the curtain before I go on, and I go, oh, thank God people still showed up. And when it's sold out, I put a sign. I go straight to my website and send a picture,
Yeah, sold out. Peter, I really appreciate you, and I thank you for your positivity and your time as always. I will let you get back to life as you know it, and thank you again on behalf of all of us to all of you.
It's good talking to you, Jason. Take care. Be safe.
Always be well.
Sail well. Bye.
Yes, sir. To all our Flower Power friends, thanks for tuning in. From Peter, Noone, and I, have a wonderful rest of your day. We'll see you around.
See you, Jason.